Yeah. Okay. Well, awesome. We're back out here. We're over here in Engel Volker St. Pete Beach. We're in the back office here. We have the one and only. I mean, absolutely incredible, remarkable agent. Been in the business for what, like 16, 17 years. Was a nurse going all the way back to the AIDS epidemic. So much experience, so many stories, so much wisdom, and really just a great, great person. Michael Pino. Welcome.
Thank you, Eric.
Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, yeah. Well, today, we're just kind of talking about, I'm laughing here. So, I'm a lifelong native, right? Second generation native here in St. Pete, Tampa Bay. You've been here a very long time, but you're originally from Long Island, right?
Yes, Long Island, New York.
Yes. So, probably a bit of a culture shock coming from the New York area, and you were in the city for a long time. At the time, it was kind of sleepy, St. Pete.
Absolutely. And in fact, in 1996, I moved to Fort Lauderdale. And back then, it was a sleepy little town.
Yeah.
And imagine what St. Pete was like. It was even more sleepy.
They called it Heaven's waiting room or Heaven's doorstep. It wasn't where we used to joke, it wasn't where the old people went. It was where the parents of the elderly came to keel over and die, basically.
Yes, that was what people said. And when I moved to Fort Lauderdale from New York, first of all, I felt like I needed to get on a very fast-moving train and just go somewhere. The amount of energy that comes out of New York is still in your body. When you get here, you can't even believe it. You don't realize it's in you until you're in a slower-paced society. And so I realized, oh my God, I just want to get on a subway right now and move really fast. So I noticed that some of my friends wanted to move to the sleepier town, St. Petersburg. And I said, why would you do that?
Wow.
And I didn't do it until 2006.
So what caused it? Well, at that point, it was already starting to change pretty substantially.
Yes.
But it's funny because, you brought up 1996. So my parents, so I'm obviously a little younger, but my parents in the early 90s were thinking about where they were going to buy their house and start their family. My dad's from Houston, Texas. My mom is from St. Pete. And, I have to say a shout out real quick to a good friend of mine. You guys probably know him. He's a legendary person here. Austin Barnum, seventh generation, native here. But he's from Tampa. He lives in, South Tampa. My parents originally, all their friends are like, you're going to buy a house in St. Pete? This is in the early 90s. You're going to buy a house in St. Pete? Why would you ever buy a house in St. Pete? That's so lame. Like, come live in South Tampa. That's where it's happening. That's where it's at. Well, they get that house in the 90s. I end up being born, and then my brothers end up being born. And then all of a sudden, it's like that whole St. Pete right around that time just starts to change. There's so much development. The whole city starts transforming. You actually start to get more nightlife and culture, restaurants. And it just, talk about that. Because you were kind of right in the precipice because you were originally a nurse, but then you got into real estate kind of in the middle of that transition.
Correct. Here. Yes. And I always speak that, my nursing career never changed. When I joined the real estate world, I never ever felt like I left the nursing profession. All of the same skills that I used for all those years as a nurse. And mind you, I did it starting in 1981 as a nurse's aide.
That's amazing.
Back in the day in a psychiatric hospital with the criminally insane. And that lined me up perfectly for the skills needed today.
Well, thank you for your service.
Working with the criminally insane. It does come close to that sometimes.
I see a little bit has rubbed off on you.
Yes, it has.
Yeah.
It truly has. You have to be a jokester. You have to be a chameleon.
Yeah.
You have to be a little crazy, too.
You do. Well, we call Michael around here. You guys, listen, Michael, when you meet him, it's like you've known him for generations. It's like you've known him a long time. At least that was my experience. We call him the Velvet Hammer because he has this holistic, amazing presence, and he comes in and he can just bring a peace and calming to a room with a sophistication. But when things need to get real, need to tighten up, you get that dropping of the Velvet Hammer. I mean, just imagine that, like that little. It's like a soft, just like that.
This is what needs to be done.
And it's just like ringing a gong in the mountains. I mean, that sounds a little crazy, but that's how I would like it.
That's exactly how we have to work. And
Yeah.
you do the same thing. And I think any seasoned real estate agent does do that same thing. We have to rein it in for people.
Yes.
And we have to guide them, and sometimes seriously guide them in the moment to take action.
Yeah.
And that's why that velvet hammer comes into play. And I think we all wear that velvet hammer when we're operating on, all levels.
Well, I think that's a great point actually you bring in, and kind of right before we get back into St. Pete, you talk about real estate, because that's what we do here. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, we're very, very passionate about St. Pete. We're all about growing and developing the city for the better. That doesn't mean just building up. That means sustaining and building, growing the culture here and working within the community. But within that, you're providing a lot of service. But what you're also doing is you have to provide a lot of confidence. There's so much uncertainty. There's so much fear, particularly in this market nowadays, but just in the world. And people, even the most intelligent and confident of people, come to us every day, and they think they know what they want to do, but they're either confused or they're getting pulled in all sorts of different directions. And there's really, ultimately, the word is noise. There's so much noise in their head right now, and it's how can we tune that in? How can we focus, bring back some of that noise, and get to the truths that are going to help them make that decision, to be able to make that decisive and determined call for their future, and not only their future, the future of their family for generations to come. And that's a huge responsibility that we're doing specifically here, because St. Pete, it's a crazy market.
Yes, it is. And I wanted to bring up that, you're also helping the community in a project you're doing right now.
Oh, yeah.
For small houses.
Yeah, well, right now, we're in the process of building a tiny home community. We're looking at, for right now, we kind of have preliminary approved with the county for Hillsborough. We're just east of Tampa, so it's unincorporated, but 60 affordable units. The whole thing is how can we bring these into the community? Basically, for the time your payments basically being for all of your costs of living between $800 and $1,600 a month to have a high quality home. Now it's a smaller lifestyle, so a lot of this you're looking, between the lowest units, 450 square feet to about 800 square feet. So it's a bit of a different lifestyle. But in those payments, that included everything with your utilities, all of your, with any, if you take out a loan or mortgage, whatever it is. That is something that doesn't exist in Tampa. To have that in a high quality community that's set up and it's marketed with caps on who can actually live in there based on the median income, that's something that we're really passionate about, because the truth is there's only so much land here. And there's so many people that live, like in Pinellas County, just a couple of years ago, the median income was $58,000 a year for a family. But then the median price right now for a home in Pinellas County as of last month in July or in August was $480,000. So basically, to be able to afford that house, you have to be basically mid $100,000. You have to be like $140,000, $150,000 a year in income. So basically, a little less than triple what people are just making, just like the couple of years before. That income gap hasn't made it yet. So we need to be thinking about these pioneering solutions, honestly, because otherwise you have all these people that have lived here for generations that don't know anything else that are going to be displaced. And I think this is a major, people talk about affordable housing, it's a buzzword. They say, oh, we're going to leave affordable units in there. But everyone's trying to build luxury apartments that with studios starting at $2,500 a month. No one's really wanting to make the serious calls because they just get caught off by the price tags, the money bags.
And I would say that coming from New York, we're very used to living in 450 to 850 square feet. That's not an issue for many people. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it's that far-fetched that people will be attracted to the smaller homes.
Plus, you have a yard. That's the difference. It's not like you're crammed in with no light. Lots of natural light, yard, high-quality build. These things have withstood 180 mile per hour winds in Puerto Rico and Key West. So these structures have been tested. They've been tested in Chile with 8.2 magnitude earthquakes. These are strong homes. So we're not just building some cardboard box. It's quality and affordability.
And where in Tampa is it?
It's over in the East Lake Orient Park area.
So we need to ask Austin about East Lake Orient. You are the Tampa man.
Yeah, I don't know much about that area though.
Well, do you know where it is? Is it in the woods?
It's right by the Florida the amphitheater. by the Florida
by the
State Fairgrounds.
casino.
Yep, by the Hard Rock.
So the Hard Rock Casino.
Yep.
Have you been there?
Yes, I have.
So you know that area, don't you, Austin?
It's an area, yeah, there's a lot that's coming up. And the one thing is,
I think there's also a big furniture store there. IKEA.
that's a little bit over a ways. Yeah, that's closer to Ybor.
All right. Well, I'm not a Tampa guy, so.
No worries. But to get here from this part, actually, you're not too wrong. To get to downtown, depending on how you drive there, it's an 8-minute drive.
The Selman
hopping on.
Expressway is how
Yep.
I take myself to the casino, to the amphitheater, and to IKEA.
Well, back into talking about the area, I'm glad you brought that up. Austin just said off camera about Ybor City. And I think about Ybor City, and I think about that Theo Von video where, see, people might have all sorts of ideas about Theo Von. All I will say is some of his videos are just hilarious. And he describes Florida and Tampa, and he's like, man, Tampa, the zoning's kind of weird. It's like a bunch of pirates that got landlocked, and pirating went out of business. So you might have like strip club that has a used car lot that's selling, $2 sliders at the back. But it kind of is that case. I mean, like you go around Tampa and it's so interesting to me because you do have so many diverse businesses kind of all thrown in together. And you walk down Ybor and you have like a whole mix of life and culture, don't you, Michael?
Yeah, I love Ybor. I love walking down 7th
Yeah.
Avenue. Is it 7th Avenue or 7th Street?
7th Avenue.
7th Avenue, yeah. And they have some really cool new eateries opening up constantly in that area, just like St. Pete.
Well, they
They're
have
trying
the
to compete
staple
with us.
because the Cuban sandwich is from Tampa, right? Yeah. So the Cuban sandwich was actually, people think it was just Cubans, but it was the Cubans and the Jewish and German migrants and immigrants all working in the cigar
And the
factories.
Italians were there.
Italians too.
Don't leave us out.
But yeah, but then salami. Yeah, you're right. That's right. But then you had
Pepperoni.
the Columbia. The Columbia is such a great restaurant down at the end of 7th. Like, I mean, it's an institution at this point. I mean, maybe some people don't like it. I think it's amazing. It's great.
Yes, Ybor is quite diverse. And then they've got these trolley car systems, which I really like, which connect you from Ybor over to the arena area where you can get
Downtown,
all of your
right, by
hockey
Amalie?
games.
Yep.
Yeah, Amalie Arena.
So they have Water Street over there too. That's actually, I haven't really spent a lot of time in that Water Street development since they finished that.
It's pretty awesome.
It's pretty incredible. Yeah, I've been going over there more and more because I'm in the Hillsborough County office a lot. But
I find the architecture that whoever they used,
great.
I know it was
Well
Vinnick,
done.
and I know it was Mr. Gates that put in a lot of money down there. But they
Yeah.
used some top-notch architecture and construction companies, and the buildings are unique looking. They're
Yes.
interesting. They're artistically diverse.
That's
and
what
they
we
made
need.
it very walkable now.
Well, that's one thing that I'll say that I want to see more in St. Pete of, and that's why one of the things that we're doing with on our own shop and our own development projects is unique architecture. I get tired. I feel like, and it's not just in Florida; it was all over the country, really. But people, because there was such demand for residential units and just for any type of new thing, people could get away putting money into construction that wasn't really inspiring, architecture that was kind of bland, finishes that weren't really all that, and they could call it luxury, but so many people wanted it, they could just get away with it. But it's kind of a shame, and I kind of miss when people would have to actually, hey, we're going to create a new building, a new high-rise. We're actually going to make this inspiring. Like, I want to see like what they're doing in Austin, more vertical green space. Can we incorporate that? Interesting and unique architectural elements. Are we going to build like a giant rectangle in the sky that has windows? Are we going to actually make something that is beautiful and scenic that adds to the culture and identity of the city?
Correct. And one in particular building that did do that to the max is the brand new American Craftsman Art Museum.
Yes.
On 4th and 4th.
So
It
cool.
rivals any major institution by leading architects anywhere in the world. And just check that one out on
Yeah.
4th and 4th in downtown St. Pete.
Yep. I
It
live right by it.
rivals the artifacts that they have in the museum. I mostly just looked at the
It's
museum
beautiful.
itself.
I remember them building that because the thing that's actually St. Pete in particular, we're known for our craft arts. So versus like fine art where you might think of like a oil on canvas painting on a wall, these are things that tend to be three-dimensional, unique, non-conventional furniture,
lighting,
materials, things of that
stained
nature.
glass.
My grandmother was an artist. It was from Germany. Originally, she studied had a master's in biochemistry, or the equivalent of that, from the University of Cologne in Germany. And when she came over here and ended up moving over to the States, she ended up getting into like fine jewelry production, making like artisan jewelry out of like mastodon tusk. In fact, a lot of it was not legal. She had a good friend who was an archaeologist who used to get skeletons for like mastodons and then take off part of the bone and give it to my grandmother to make jewelry of, which wasn't supposed to do, but it was just amazing. So we have all this kind of cool stuff, but then she would put it in these museums all around the country and internationally, and would come over here to the west coast of Florida. And we had all these cool, even back to like the 90s and before 80s, they had these cool like pop-up craft museums. Florida Craft Art on Central is another great one. And then so they have the American Arts and Crafts right off of 4th is, I think, a big deal. It's an accomplishment.
Truly. And one of the residential buildings that I love, done by a New York team, is 400 Central.
I'm excited to see them finish that. I think
different design.
It'll be the first building in downtown St. Pete, which will be above 500 feet. It'll be the tallest building in Florida outside of Tampa, Miami. Jacksonville might have one or two that beats us, but this is going to be a tall building.
And the shape of it is what really intrigued me.
Yeah, you look this thing up. It's like this oval. Imagine this like ovular cylindrical. Man, my geometry skills. Cylindrical, but kind of take that and stretch it out. And there's going to be all sorts of cool shops. And that's what's interesting, though, is that whole block, because there's been so much construction. And if you go up and down Central, they've been taking and restoring some of the older buildings, building more buildings right in that area. I'd say by the time 400 Central's done and those projects are finished, give it 3 years, you won't even recognize that block area. That spot is going to be full of so much nightlife. It's going to be one of the most hopping places in St. Pete.
I agree.
I'd put my money on it.
I do put my money on it, and I think everyone listening to this podcast, look it up. Call us. We'll help you make that decision.
Yeah. Well, any notable before we wrap up here then? Well, first, tell us what you love here. Like, there's so many fun places. We're talking about mostly Tampa and St. Pete right now, but there's a whole lot of fun things here in Florida. I mean, if you hear the Florida man stories, it's all true. Florida's just a unique place, and particularly Tampa Bay. But any fun like stories or legends here that you think are kind of fun, like legendary things or people, figures, myths from St. Pete, Tampa that might be fun to share.
Oh my goodness. Well, there is Silas Dent. He was this guy who lived on Cabbage Key, and he was like I guess he looked like a migrant type.
Okay.
And migrant is not the right word. He would wear overalls, and he would have bare feet, and he would have really long beard and hair, and he lived in the woods on Cabbage Key, this little remote little island.
Wow.
And
I've never heard that one, actually.
Yeah, so Silas
like
Dent, you could look him up.
Like Cabbage Man.
He was like a cabbage man.
A little cabbage man.
Yes.
Wow. The two that I guess I have, one is Old Hitler, legendary hammerhead shark from the 80s that used to be like a 25 foot hammerhead that patrolled the waters underneath the Skyway Bridge and all throughout old Tampa Bay.
I heard that too.
Yeah. And then the other one is the tunnels. This one's real. So Tampa Bay used to have a huge mob and mafia presence. I mean, it was a port city. It's a major port city in the Gulf, connections directly into Latin, South America. So we had these from the original creation. I believe it was in Ybor. Austin would know this, but there's these tunnels.
He's nodding his head.
There's these tunnels under Ybor that they still exist. They're like all shut off. They're like almost impossible to get into. I used to have a thing for going into abandoned places. I have crazy stories on that for other episodes, but these tunnels are just incredible. I mean, it's like this whole network that goes under. They're all like brick, and it's just kind of cool. And supposedly it was a big back in Prohibition, and even throughout, I think even sometimes in the 60s and 70s with some of the local mob activity, utilizing these tunnels for all sorts of smuggling and activities of the night. Yeah, who knows what you're going to find down there. It's like you go into Paris and you go through the catacombs. That's like our catacombs, except it's brick and interesting things. So,
have you heard of tours of this, Austin?
I've heard of this. I've never heard of a tour of it.
It's something we can perhaps do. You have an interesting connection to the nightlife of Tampa with the comedic end.
Yeah, I do. But I don't have a microphone, so it's gonna.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll tell them about it.
We're gonna have to do. There's a great club.
Yeah, the gimmick.
The gimmick. Just so it's in Ybor. It's like right off the railroad tracks, close to 7th. we went there. Were you there for that when we were there that night?
I've been there once. You've been there several times.
I've actually only been there once, but I'm definitely going back. Great. That's where they filmed the What's Up Tampa show, I think this was called. First off, like one of the best local podcasts. But that is such a fun place to go. We had a great time. Owners are cool. All sorts of unique art. Supposedly everything in there is for sale. Like everything on the wall, maybe even the building. I don't know. You could just go in and start negotiating. There's meetings going, our comics up, and yeah. So, but anyways, those are just some gems. We kind of hit a lot of topics here. Any sign offs for you?
Austin, you're going to have a lot of editing to do.
Yeah, he's going to be fine. Well, I was going to say, what we're going to do is, there's no need. We're keeping it nice and chill. Once again, this is, we got Michael Pino over here. You can find him on Facebook or on the internet. Look him up. He just spent a whole bunch of money building out his web presence. So go look him up. You'll find him. And my name is Eric Hempel. You can find me at Eric, E-R-I-K, Hempel, H-E-M, as in Michael, P-E-L. And yeah, let us know what's up. And let me know your favorite spots and secrets in Tampa Bay.